Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Kent Terry, and I'm here on behalf of the SMPTE San Francisco section. And the section is proud to be a partner in sponsoring the summit this year. Appreciate all the other sponsors, too, especially ASG and the work Dave Van Hoy and all the others have done to put this on, and we're proud to be part of that. SMPTE's sponsoring a number of events today, both these sessions and some events later. We have an education workshop and a SMPTE student keynote, so stay around for that. And immediately following this 2110 panel, we'll have a SMPTE keynote. So any SMPTE members in the audience so far? Very good to see. If you're not a member, we've got a booth across from the auditorium. We're happy to share with you because we're a global community of media technology creators and users. It's not just the typical broadcast engineers of everywhere. We're involved in anything with and everything with media around the world. So come and see us. It's a great way to get involved in the community. So,
is there a discount?
And there is, in fact, a discount thanks to Pat. We're offering 20% today. If you come by the booth, there's a QR code, and you get 20% off a yearly discount. So we'd love to have you as a member and help support events like this. I also happen to be a member personally of the SMPTE standards community. That's a big part of what SMPTE does is standards, and I've been directly involved in the development of 2110. It's a personal interest of mine. It's all about interoperability, making sure things interoperate. That's what SMPTE standards are all about. And it's great. It's great to see it getting deployed. You know, the standards are pretty much done, but there's still the work to make it happen, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to introduce our moderator, Steve Young, who's head of ASG Consulting Group, and he's got a great panel assembled. So take it away, Steve.
Well, thank you, Kent. Yes, an amazing panel that we have this morning, and we're going to solve your SMPTE 2110 problems and make all of your projects seamless. So introductions, we have Rachel Ford, broadcast engineer from Amazon.
Actually, there's a slight miscalculation there. I am no longer with Amazon. There was an update recently. I work for Monumental Sports Entertainment as a broadcast IT engineer now. Sorry, just wanted to throw that out there.
Friday and today?
I am next week, yes. Yes.
Okay, well, congratulations. And Jeremy from Megapixel, say hello, and CEO, founder of Megapixel, and Gary Schneider, system architect for LinkedIn. And Val Sosa, broadcast engineer and DEI leader for Netflix.
Hey, guys. So
this morning, we're going to start off with some perspective, and each of the panelists are going to give us an overview of where they are with SMPTE 2110 and where they are in their journey in adoption, whether that's full-blown or whether it's a hybrid or some combination. Let's start there.
Great, and so we can actually go back to Amazon. So I started my SMPTE 2110 journey at Amazon's headquarters in Washington, D.C. What is supposed to be almost a copy-paste but future version of their HQ1 in Seattle. And I went into there as the only engineer on site. That was incredibly humbling to walk in, and Diversified is actually one of our vendors we worked with. So I walked into, as a system engineer there, really needing to dive into what I'm sure a lot of you are diving into now, and that's getting into more networking. My networking background is as extensive as NDI, and when I was a broadcast engineer at Nielsen for 8 years. So they have a new 2110 system there, but the big thing that I'm sure you guys are going to hear about today a lot is who knows how to use this. So I dived in more into SMPTE 2110. I've been a member, but I do need to give out kudos to SMPTE organization for giving me the opportunity to be part of their 2110 training. And they do have a fabulous IP boot camp. It's 3 months. If you really want to drive yourself through the mud, or you feel like the military was for you and you just missed your shot, I would join the boot camp. So with that, me and another engineer were responsible for developing the SOPs, onboarding new vendors, and managing the interoperability of all our devices on a 2110 system that nobody in our leadership understood. I'm the only certified engineer that took 2110 training. So a big thing, again, you've heard in the morning announcements here is you have to be consistently educating yourself. I'll plug in that boot camp one more time because they sent me the t-shirt. Anyway, and so now I am starting a new journey. Next week, I do work for Monumental Sports Entertainment, MSE, which is Capital One Arena. If you're not a Capitals fan, that's okay. I'm from Florida, I'm a Lightning fan. So what's gonna be unique there is it's actually an arena that's established. In most 2110 environments, to my knowledge, if somebody else knows, this is a full arena that will be commissioned while operation to 2110. So this summer, we're gonna be doing a whole commissioning of, I think where you take for granted now, you have open spaces. It's kind of like an open house. You can install everything. We can't do that. We still have to be in operation. So I'll be part of the team that's responsible for that, but leaning on the networking side.
Yes,
so
changing
that's
the
my
wheels
journey.
while the car is
Yep.
running. One of those.
Yep.
Yes, I've been through several. Good luck with that.
Thank you.
Jeremy?
Yeah, so Megapixel, we make visual technology across a lot of different markets, and our journey thinking about putting video over an IT infrastructure started a little over 10 years ago because we'll build LED tiles that we have to connect in some way. We were working on a fixed install project, even though we kind of come out of live events and concert touring, where we needed to network 20,000 LED tiles together in a very large public space. And we thought IT infrastructure would be the way to do this so that we could leverage fiber and have all of the metadata shared. And so this is what we've implemented and is very core to our system. And we're the only system that I'm aware of on the planet that is actually properly Ethernet compliant. So all the tiles can share data and they're almost like little IoT devices on the network. When we heard that SMPTE 2110 was a thing so that we could also start working with other companies to implement the same type of networking upstream of our systems, we were like, yes, this is amazing because we can share metadata, we can be interoperable, and it doesn't matter that the new version of HDMI comes out, the new version of DisplayPort comes out. Once we're on the network, it's all good, and we can change things over time and be more software defined. So it's been an amazing journey for us to be able to see what other companies are doing, both on the client side and the vendor side. So yeah, this is an exciting space for us.
Thanks, Jeremy. Gary?
Yeah, we began our journey in IP in 2015, and I had recently attended a conference where I learned about 2022-6 and just the idea of having IP media across a network. And when I came to LinkedIn, and the thinking was we want global facilities that are interoperable. IP, in my view, this is the direction we need to go. And we were a greenfield space. We built up some pretty simple systems, lots of gateways, so it's very hybrid. But it allowed us to kind of get our hands into networking that we really hadn't had to do before. And it was a great kind of a training ground for us because at that time there wasn't a lot of training. There was a lot of kind of high level getting into the weeds on what the standards were and all of that. We took that to a certain point, and then as 2110 became viable, we've pushed forward 5 of our 6 facilities are 2110 today. And the idea is we want any of our control rooms and any of our venues or studios to be able to connect together. And having an IP network and being able to move that media across our WAN to all the various facilities really helps in a lot of different ways, from human resource to even technology resources. And we've taken that a little step further where we're looking at just utilization of particular devices. I always go to like the record channel kind of scenario. If each facility needs 12, do we really need 48 channels when only 30 are used at any one time? And if we need to route video to other locations to do that, these are all just resources on a network. And since all of our facilities are locked to GPS, time code is the same, link latency, I'll throw that out there. But that's really been kind of the idea behind 2110 in a corporate environment. So that's pretty much where we're at.
Val?
My 2110 journey started in 2021. I was brought over to Fox Technology Center in Tempe, Arizona. At that time, one of the largest 2110 brand new facilities. And I was hired by the distribution team, which was the old legacy engineers, so RF, they knew everything about baseband, and I was this young girl with all of the network background, and within a short amount of time, I just became the 2110 expert. I was curious about multicast. Why is this not getting routed here? Why is this IP looking different than what I have on my encoder? So slowly, progressively, I just became a 2110 expert because there was a lack of experience when it comes to what network was. So during the last 4 years, I deployed the Tempe UHD systems. I did a lot of interops with a lot of vendors that we have here today. So it's really nice to see a lot of familiar faces here today. But one of the things that it's most important about the 2110 facilities, I think it's the knowledge, the gap that we have, and also understanding the capacity that you're looking to plan, and also the strategy that you have to move over to 2110. Because I think 2110 facilities, everyone's like, oh, it's shiny. Let's put 2110. And then you realize, oh, what have I done, right? Like, this was too much. I overspanned, or I was not planning to have so many issues with XYZ vendors or XYZ systems, right? So I think for me, this last 4 years were a lot of understanding of what the priorities are, why are we doing this, and what the future might look like, and do things in a very slow scale. And over 5 months ago, I was brought over to the Netflix team, where I am a live broadcast engineer, one of two. Woohoo! And we are building new infrastructure and the new exciting things that hopefully all of you have seen over the last year, and that you will continue to see on the platform for many years to come.
Wow, exciting progression there. You brought up a couple of points. One was on, new systems, adopting, developing. I'm interested in these implementations and to what degree they're hybrid, to what degree they're mixed with SDI or other standards.
I can respond if you want. I think starting with the first point of the chain, right, providers. We're receiving signals from stadiums. We're receiving signals from different locations. I don't think everyone is still equipped to hand off IP, right? So we still have a lot of SDI handoff in all of the facilities. So regardless of your implementation, you know that there will be a hybrid approach. So understanding what the difference is between just putting an IPG that will transcode that from, or encaps that from SDI to IP, but understanding what their requirements are and how many feeds you need to plan, because in SDI world, right, you have so many cables. On the IP side, you just have 100 gig plug-in fiber that can transport a lot of your stream and route them across the center.
Any other inputs there?
We're mostly hybrid still. We have a lot of gateway cards, but for some new devices that we're implementing, even if they are not native IP, what we're looking at doing now is we settle on our facility standard, which is IP, and then we push all the conversion to the edge. So we'll have fiber run to all of the various boxes. We can go SDI to IP directly at the back of the box. And that way in the future, if we're upgrading hardware and things like that and native IP becomes available, then it's really easy to just insert that into the mix. So we're becoming more and more IP as manufacturers are coming out with more IP native devices. And yeah, the interop is always an issue, but NMOS is getting better.
Yes, it wasn't a thing when you first started with your IP implementation, was it?
No, no NMOS.
Yeah, on our side for the displays, we're seeing a lot of hybrid as well. We're mostly in the 8K space, and so a lot of people are configuring units with both 100 gig 2110 capability as well as 4x 12 GSDI, so that kind of anything can go in or out. And what's interesting is, especially in the corporate world, we're seeing a lot of arbitrary resolutions being used because of like the massive, LED walls that we deploy for presentations and keynotes and those kinds of things. And so those are very often going even far beyond 8K. They're getting into 12K, 16K, 32K, and you can send that all down 100 gig fiber. So that's been really well adopted in many cases, but then a lot of times people still need to be sending 12G, and having the interop between both, I think, is really important. So even though we're talking a lot about 2110, as was mentioned, it's important to kind of be able to blend these things together, because you can't really necessarily be all one or all the other unless it's a brand new facility.
And just, you mentioned like brand new facility, even with our brand new headquarters, it still is a hybrid, because we are 12G capable, but a lot of our end users are still only requiring 1080p. We can work and operate in 3G, but being able to flip over or being able to accommodate those are important. So the hybridness in our decisions of new equipment we purchase is extremely important, at least for the next 5 years. We'll see where it goes, but being a new facility gave us the opportunity to check what does need to be inoperable, or what does need to mix well with the rest of our system. So we set ourselves up for success, but we also have to recognize and tell our management, hey, I know this is a great new shiny toy, but we really do need to consider of the factors of what we have here right now that are also probably more affordable.
Yeah, well, that's a very good segue into our next topic, which is cost-benefit analysis, and how to justify the spend on a 2110 adoption, and whether that's hybrid or whether that's 100% 2110. I think the landscape for cost-benefit has evolved. Initially, perhaps it was mostly around cabling and around networking, but I think perhaps there are other perspectives that have come to fore just over the last couple of years. So I'd be interested to hear your experience with cost-benefit analysis and proposing a 2110 upgrade or architecture for your facilities or for your business.
I would think a big one is flexibility and ergo scalability. You can scale on an IP backbone. There is an infinite amount of opportunities that are recognized and unrecognized for the future. There's a limit with baseband. It can only handle so much. I think the biggest thing you might come into across is how to translate that to the people who do control the purse strings. And how do you show them the benefit? And the previous, I hope you guys were able to catch part of the panel there in the auditorium. There is an ROI, but maybe there's not just a fiscal one. There, for us, going into Monumental Sports, there is an audience. How do we show that we can engage them in ways that they haven't thought of yet? That might even be sci-fi.
On our side, for the equipment side, we definitely see cost savings once things start scaling well beyond 4K and 8K. So we always think about what performance is required, but also what kind of resiliency, redundancy, and security are needed for these signals, and then how big is the raster. So if somebody's using 16K by 2K or 32K by 1K, getting into those canvas sizes would start to become overly complex, running a bunch of 4K signals, because they have to go through switchers and routers and other things to composite them into one piece. Whereas with 100 gig, somebody can DMA straight from a GPU, whether it's NVIDIA or AMD, like straight into our box. And so you don't need any infrastructure in between other than a switch. That'll take 100 gig SFP. So that side, we're seeing a lot of adoption. But there's definitely a cost associated with that switching infrastructure that, again, over time pays for itself, because it's very flexible, but you have to think about a lot of those things up front.
For us, we realized savings when we started really getting into REMIs, and particularly REMIs within our environment. New York, as an example, has a studio, but it does not have a control room. So all of the live events that happen from New York are cut in Mountain View. And, all of the travel and the teaming, all of those components to, a remote production, that was a big savings. Then when we started thinking about how decentralizing your infrastructure can also be a benefit, I mentioned just looking at utilization for a lot of our devices, and you don't have to build cookie cutter 5 facilities that look and work identical. You can think about like utilization and know what we need at any one time within our entire enterprise, and we see and realize savings there as well.
I think, Steve, you mentioned something about how SCI, cabling obviously, right? Like who likes to touch so many cables? It would look like a spaghetti mixing. I think on that same front, 2110 and IP networks have allowed so many people to put distributed models out there where you don't necessarily need to have a facility with 20,000 cables. You can plug a fiber or an IP into a meet me room and have everything virtualized, right? You don't need to have a specific person assigned in a data center all the time moving a cable, patching a cable in front of it. So the virtualization of the industry and the devices, I think, makes a great cost saving or cost analysis when it comes to 2110. It's so much more flexible than what we were used to do when having SCI and having to connect so many cables and, you know, between one facility and other, having to figure out how are you going to start transporting things. Now with IP and with 2110, right, you can just transport 2110 over JXS, and great. It's just flows over the world, really low latency and a lot better than basement.
Excellent point. Yeah, thank you. Excellent points. What about operationally? I think we're starting to kind of delve into operational impacts of a 2110 implementation, which also have an impact, a positive impact on cost. And specifically with 2110, are you seeing any specific improvements, whether it's with the ancillary data or whether it's with compressed video, that are adding to the value of the implementation?
I need to think on that one for a bit. Because when you say operation, I also think of the people who are actually behind the scenes.
Yes,
needing to
and so
operate
things
it.
like automation, things like
Yeah.
compression using, well, I don't want to. Please.
Yeah, I would say for us, again, when operation, I do think first of the operators behind the scenes. There is a learning curve for them and learning to recognize the signs. So operationally, when you have the right crew who's trained, but also when you have the right tools. So for example, we went into a 2110 system, but we did not have a network diagnostic tool to tell me where in the packet flow there was an issue. And so I felt like I was a trained conductor trying to figure out, listen, where is this? Because I knew my system so well, I could pick up, it was probably this switch that had a power failure, or it was probably our Grass Valley panel that's has the same MAC address as another item. It could get down to there, but we needed the diagnostic tool that wasn't there. So being able to see into the right packet flow, the RTP, is it arriving on time, or is it somewhere in the RX bucket? That is a thing. I think so the operational, it can operate smoothly, but making sure you have the right tools in place is something to consider.
Yes. And that almost kind of straddles the line between this conversation about cost and the benefits to like pain points, right? Which we're going to talk about next.
If I can piggyback on that, I think going back into automation, right? With IP, you have so much data at the packet level. It's so much easier to create or bring your automation team to have so much more observability into every single piece in the signal chain. So that in itself, it's definitely something that makes it worth implementing. And I think going back into operational, right? It is a learning curve going back into pinpoints, right? There's a lot of interop issues, ancillary data, SDPs, get ready for that if you haven't started on it, right? Like interop between devices, especially when you start getting into HCR or UHC, there's a lot of flavors, there's a lot of data, there's a lot, even as a single colon in your SCP can break your signal flow. So they're pinpoints, of course, and I think, yes, our panel is called Seamless 2110. I don't think we're seamless yet, but that's where if we start building people to understand the systems and the network piece, this is where we're looking towards a seamless integration.
Yeah, orchestration is huge, and it should be part of the design from the very beginning, thinking about how you're going to be monitoring your systems. and understanding how, if you don't have a lot of network experience, how the networks can fail, how you can pick up on those alarms and logs and all of those things to ensure that the teams have really good visibility into what's happening. And I like to call out that what I've been seeing is with really talented broadcast engineers, what's difficult in the transition is taking, I'll say that, the SDI lens and not taking the SDI lens to an IP problem, because that can really go down rat holes for a lot of people. It's a different way of kind of viewing your video network, and it takes time.
For sure, Gary. Yes, for sure. Jeremy, I think you're doing some interesting things with ancillary data that couldn't be done certainly in baseband.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I agree with what everybody up here said in terms of being able to have access to metadata and APIs and make things interop kind of in unique ways that could not have been done before. We like to understand what's happening on the wire so that if a display device has a flicker to it for whatever reason, somebody doesn't have to sit there and watch it. We have that data. We know what was happening on the wire, and that can get propagated into push notifications and emails and reports and logging and those kinds of things, which are very typical and usual, normal for the IT world. And so why can't we have these things in the video world? Also, from the standpoint of having the granular control over everything, for us, it's not only about interoperability with video. We like to see other things on the network as well. So video and audio are, carried often over the network, but finishing Eurovision last year, we were also carrying pyro and various camera cutting and things that could not have been done by humans. So camera cuts were specifically timed with pyrotechnics so that a camera would cut as something was happening on stage, and those kinds of things are unlocking a little bit more creative freedom as well in ways that we had not anticipated that being used at all.
Amazing
but it
stuff.
was really interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting, and it seems like we're just kind of scratching the surface of the opportunities there.
Absolutely.
With automation and interrogation of ancillary data. Yeah, awesome. Okay, we just have a couple of minutes left here, and as the last section, I'd like to just hear your pain points. And since we only have a couple of minutes, let's just, the first one, or the top of the priority list for pain points in the 2110 implementation. What do you got?
I think, like I mentioned before, and it's learning to recognize the new problems. You mentioned looking through an SDI lens, recalibrating my brain to now see it from a networking perspective. I would say that's my biggest pain point, but once you dive into it and you're day in, day out, and you got a good team with you that you work together to solve these problems, it gets easier. But not gonna lie, it's a pain point because there are people who control purse strings that probably don't understand.
Jeremy?
I would say in general, it's the interoperability and NMOS being newer than 2110 itself as a payload. Getting all of that kind of seamlessly, auto-magically working is a little bit like back in the day when we had to handcraft EDIDs for things. We see SDP records not quite right and those kind of things. So it's a little bit rocky there, but that's the main thing for us.
Pain point, but less painful than before in MOS. Yes or no?
Much less painful. Much less painful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gary?
A little less work to do, for sure. I really appreciate what others have said. I think tooling is getting better, which is wonderful to see. NMOS is getting better, and however, there are still some interop problems. So don't necessarily be in a hurry when you're trying to bring some of this up. You're going to want to take time and work with the developers and manufacturers and make sure that whatever your RDS server is, that it's picking up all the information.
Sure. Vendor engagement's important.
Yeah, and then the last thing I think would be what I'm seeing improving in NMOS is its speed. Sometimes running large salvos can take a long time when you're in NMOS because there's a lot that's happening, and that is all getting better.
Okay, Val?
I'm going to say knowledge, right? Training people the right way. When I say 2110, start with network. If you don't know the TCP/IP, if you don't know the basics of how a network's run, you're not going to be able to run a 2110 seamlessly. So definitely knowledge and diverse. Diverse perspective in your team can make a difference. Do not always look for what's obvious. Look for the people that might not look the perfect fit, because you might be surprised of how much knowledge that person can bring to your team.
Great, thank you. This was fantastic. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.